Hey, Kai. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about how men can be victims of domestic violence too. Stereotypically, we think of female victims at the hands of a man. But I want to point out that domestic violence isn't even just violence against a man or a woman in a relationship, but against children, grandparents, other people living in the house who may not even be related to the family. Domestic violence simply means that it's violence against someone who lives in the same household. I believe in some places, especially Florida, they consider it domestic violence even if you just have children together but you don't live together. They consider it domestic violence. All right, so I'm not going to be on here long tonight. I was on here like an hour and a half today. I absolutely could not believe I was on here that long. That's like the outer limits of my ability to be on here and just talk. Um, the first thing I want to share is, let's get this pulled up here. And this is from the hotline.org. Again, I love this website because it just has so many resources for victims and so much that you can learn from this website, especially like say you're not the victim, but it's your friend or your sister or your brother or whoever. All right, it says men can be victims of abuse too. At the hotline, we know that domestic violence can affect anyone, including men. According to the CDC, 1 in 7 men aged 18 and over in the United States has been a victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in his lifetime. 1 in 10 men has experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner. In 2013, 13% of documented contacts to the hotline identified themselves as male victims. That's a whole lot to take in because, like I said, we usually stereotypically think of a female as the victim and the male as the perpetrator. And it actually, there's probably a lot more men than statistics show who have experienced or are experiencing domestic violence for the simple fact that a lot of men probably just won't report it. You know, um, we see that men who are raped are much less likely to report that than females are. Um, and so I would have to assume that men would be much less likely than females to call and report that they've been abused by a fellow domestic resident, because it could be anybody. I'm not going to say partner because it could be their parent or their cousin that lives in the house or whatever. Yeah, exactly. They're ashamed. And it's the way that we raise our boys. Don't cry. Don't be a punk. Man up. Don't be soft. And we instill in them that you're not supposed to express certain types of emotions, is how most boys are raised. Um, Not to cry when they're hurt, not to go tattletaling on somebody, you know, or whatever. And so we're doing a lot of damage to our children raising them that way because we are impressing upon them that they don't really. It's basically telling them you don't have a right to feel that way, or you're wrong for feeling that way. Says although they make up a smaller percentage of callers to the hotline, there are likely many more men who do not report or seek help for their abuse for a variety of reasons. Men are socialized not to express their feelings or see themselves as victims. Wow. I kind of like just come off the top of my head when I do this stuff. I don't actually like go, most of the time, I don't go and pre read the articles. So I kind of, that kind of strikes me that that's just what I exactly said. And here it is. This is one of the things that they have on there. Our culture still clings to narrow definitions of gender, although there are signs that this is slowly shifting. Young boys are taught not to express their emotions, to suck it up and be a man. Tony Porter calls this the man box in his well known TED Talk. This can be extremely detrimental to boys as they age, especially if they find themselves in an abusive relationship. Men may feel discouraged to talk about what's going on in their personal lives, or they feel like no one will believe them. They may not even realize that they are being abused, or they might assume that they should just deal with the abuse on their own. Now, adding on to that, they may not feel that anyone will believe them. I want to say they may feel that people will look at them differently, like look down on them because they expressed emotions or reported abuse. Pervading beliefs or stereotypes about men being abusers, women being victims. Ding ding, two for Savage. The majority of domestic violence stories covered by the media are about male perpetrators and female victims who are typically in heterosexual relationships. While we certainly don't want to minimize this violence, focusing on only one type of situation renders invisible the many scenarios that do not fit this definition because abusive relationships among homosexuals, bisexuals, and trans men. This might make many victims feel like they don't have the space or the support to speak out about their own experience and seek help. Exactly. We kind of already talked about that. The abuse of men is often treated as less serious or a joke. We've seen this in action in pop culture. When a man is abused, many people don't take it as seriously, in part due to the previous two reasons we've mentioned. The truth is, abuse is not a joke in any situation between any two people. All victims deserve support and resources to help themselves. Now, going back to this one, I'm going to add they said homosexual, bisexual, sexual, and trans, but you also have heterosexual relationships where men are victims. I can tell you for a fact that I've seen it with at least two people that I know personally who they dog their dudes out. I mean, beat on them, take their money, treat them like crap, talk to them any kind of way, and the female was the only aggressor. I've seen where the male didn't strike back, didn't hit them back or anything, didn't defend themselves or in any way. If property was destroyed, they just went and repaired it or replaced it. Broken windshields, slashed tires, destroyed clothes with bleach. They just go and replace it, or repair it and keep moving and stay in the relationship where they're being abused, where they're having their money taken from them, where they're being talked to as if they're nothing. The same abuses that we see men giving to women in domestic violence relationships, it goes the other way too. Um, I have a friend. Well, I had a friend. His name was Brian White, and he was. It's been so long ago. I want to say he was about 17 or 18 when this happened because he was about to graduate high school, and he was actually killed by his girlfriend. Uh, she was one of those types who breaks up with you every day, is really jealous, plays emotional games or whatever, and this was one of the times when she was doing a breakup. And apparently she had come to his home in a vehicle. I don't know if she was driving or someone else was. Again, I said he was like maybe 17 or 18 years old because he was about to or had just graduated high school, because I remember him talking to me about some of the scholarships that he had won. He basically had a choice and he could have gone on academic or sports scholarships. Anyway, but she had come to his home in a vehicle, and I'm assuming she was driving because of the way the story went. She broke up with him apparently. They were exchanging words. When she went to get into the car, he got up onto the hood of the car, was laying on the hood of the car, begging her not to leave, not to break up with him. She threw the car in reverse and backed up. He fell off. She ran over him, and then she backed over him again at least once. He ended up on life support, and a couple of days later, he was taken off life support and he died. And this was domestic violence in teenagers. This was a high school couple. Like I said, he had just graduated or was about to graduate because he had been talking to me about the scholarships he earned. So he was right at 17 or 18. God, I'm sorry, I can't remember how long ago it was or what year it was, but some things you just kind of want to block out. And to lose a friend in such a violent way at such a young age, because I think I might have been like 2 years old. I think I was probably like 19, 18, something like that. He was only like a year or two behind me. Um, you know, to lose a friend in such a violent way, at that age, it is kind of understandable that one would block out dates and places and things. But that was, we'll just call it high school violence because they had been together in high school. This was domestic violence in a high school relationship. So it doesn't really matter about age or sex or gender or income level. I've seen stories of professional athletes, males, who have been victims. Usually we hear that the male professional athlete is the abuser, the guy that knocked his wife out in the elevator and, things like that. But in many cases, the man is the victim. We just don't hear very much about that. There's a mosquito in my room. Why? So, like I said, it could be heterosexual relationship where the male is a victim, as well as gay or bi or trans. Many believe there are no resources or support available for male victims. It can seem like the majority of shelters and services for domestic violence victims are women focused. However, services for male victims do exist. And I want to say it doesn't just seem like most of the services are female focused, they are mostly female focused. The primary domestic violence uh, shelter or center in my hometown to this day, as far as I know, is still strictly female. They don't have spaces for men. Um, they don't really have a lot of programs for or resources for men. So I don't think that's just an appearance. I think that is the fact of it. There are not as many resources and places to get help out there for men as there are women. Most federal funding resources, most federal funding sources require that domestic violence services be provided to all victims of abuse. Our advocates can provide information, assist with safety planning, and or find local resources if available. They can also help brainstorm alternative options if local programs are not meeting the requirements for male victims, including who a caller may be able to contact if they believe they have experienced discrimination. No matter what your situation is, the hotline is here to help confidentially and without judgment. Please give us a call anytime or chat online with us 24/7, 365. So let's go to this one. Myths around men experiencing abuse. Talking about abuse and domestic violence can be a difficult task for anyone. It can be painful, confusing, and make you feel ashamed, inadequate, and isolated. And it can be incredibly challenging when you are a man because of all the stigma, fear, misinformation, and societal pressures that only men seem to experience. We know that while domestic violence does not discriminate when it comes to gender, men seem to not report abuse in the same way women do. In fact, many men remain silent because they think there is no point in reporting the abuse because no one will ever believe them. Let's debunk some of the myths about abuse and why men are not believed. Myth 1: the world tells us that men can't be victims of abuse. We know that 1 in 10 men have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner, and yet we also hear from our male contacts that they are simply not believed or taken seriously when reporting the abuse to family members, friends, or law enforcement. On average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape. Let me read that again. On average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. So violence can and does happen to men too. Myth 2. Exactly, one too many. Myth 2. The media tells us men are just the perpetrators of violence, but never the victims. And yeah, that's what we see. We see it in the movies, the TV shows, the television ads. Is always the man is the victim. I'm gonna do a quick little. I'm gonna take this time to do a quick little experiment here, just because they mentioned that. Let's do this. We're going to Google domestic violence, and we're gonna look at the images. Let's see. The woman is the victim in this. Oh, hold on. Let me share it. So you guys can see. This is all I googled was domestic violence, and this is what comes up under the images search. In this first one you see, it's portraying a woman as a victim. Down here, this is a woman holding this help sign, a woman with the writing on her hand, a man swinging at a woman. Here, another woman, a woman. This could be a man or a woman, I'm not sure, but I think that's a woman. Domestic violence statistics, all three people in the drawing are women. Another woman. So it's there we go again. The male is the perpetrator in this one. And in this one. So we stereotypically we're kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not brainwashed, but we are kind of programmed or conditioned to think of female victims, male perpetrators, never male victims. And you can see that just from the pictures that came up on a simple search. All of these show the female as the victim. Here, a woman with a black eye, a guy in the background with his arms folded. Here, a woman seeming kind of sad, a guy looks like he's having a fit of rage. A man attacking a woman in the silhouette. A man attacking a woman in this silhouette. This picture here, all three of these are women, and then you have a police officer. So it's not a common thing to think of men as victims of domestic violence or any other type of violence. And that is something that we really need to break, because that is something we really need to break because it is detrimental to a certain demographic of victims out there who feel like they can't come forward. Okay, so where were we? In contribution of media to the normalization and perpetuation of domestic violence, we see that domestic violence has become has become so pervasive in our society thanks to media exposure that we have become desensitized and even accustomed to it. According to this study, chronic and repeated exposure to domestic violence is believed to cause changes in affective, cognitive, and behavioral processes. So that happens. So what happens when this repeated exposure only portrays men as perpetrators and not victims? You get the idea. But make no mistake, domestic violence is not normal. It's not a joke, and it's not something we should readily accept as something that only happens to women. It happens to men too. Myth 3. Men are not real men if they can't take it. We hear from male contacts that reach out to the hotline daily that they feel emasculated and less of a man when undergoing situations of abuse at the hands of their spouses or partners. Some have even reported feeling so ashamed that they don't even want to acknowledge the abuse because they fear that if they do, they will make the situation quote unquote real. According to the American Psychological Association, stereotypes of masculinity can have a negative effect on young boys and men because they stigmatize, quote, normal human emotions, unquote. And if a man feels stigmatized about what's happening to him, it's very likely that they might not want to report the abuse or talk about ways of dealing with it and their emotions. Feeling angry, scared, or sad are normal emotions for all people when dealing with abuse, regardless of sex or sexual orientation. And they don't have to, quote, take it to prove their masculinity. Now that was a mouthful. Kaimoja says that should change. Add some men on their cowering as well. Attention should be made that men are victims too. Absolutely. 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 And in such a politically correct day and age where everyone tries to be sensitive to all these different groups and different beliefs and whatever, it seems like somebody in the marketing department would have said, you know what, we need a male victim in there. Myth 4, men don't have access to the same resources as women. And I'm going to say that is not a myth. They do not, they absolutely do not have access to the same resources as women, because in a lot of places it's still woman focused. They don't have housing for men who are victims of domestic violence and need to leave. A lot of places can put a woman up in like an apartment or hotel or some type of community living facility to get them out of the violent situation. They really don't have that for men on that level. Myth 4, men don't have access to the same resources as women. When there seem While there seems to be more resources for women than men when it comes to dealing with domestic violence, we continue to make strides toward this issue. In October 2017, the Associated Press reported that a shelter exclusively for men was the second of its kind to open its doors in the state of Texas, the second in Texas. 2017, and they only had two. Now, I guarantee you they had far more than two domestic violence centers for females in Texas in 2017. So there you can see in their own wording that there's not as many resources available for men. They suggest more resources are becoming available to men as society's views on abuse and domestic violence affecting men are also changing, and that I can say is true. They are making strides. They are in a lot of places trying to branch out and offer a wider variety of resources and services to male victims of domestic violence, trans, homosexual, bisexual, whatever. They are working toward having multiple resources or easily accessible resources out there for men. But as it stands right now, men do not have the same access as women have. Hey PJ, how you doing? You guys were great on your panel. I watched it. I got to finish it up because I had to stop watching to go do something and then come back, and now I'm live. So, but I'm going to finish it. That harmony panel you guys are doing was awesome. It's amazing. Kaimojo says, yeah, at least one. Two would draw attention. Just think, if someone is looking at those pics and see a male victim, it may open their eyes to something they had no idea even existed. You are absolutely right. You are absolutely 100% right, Kaimojo. I'm going to pin that comment for a while. Myth 5, men who are gay or bisexual will bring shame on the LGBTQ community if they report being victims of abuse. Well, that's a new one on me. It's already hard enough dealing with abuse when you are a heterosexual person, but for gay or trans men, this can be even more difficult. Even more difficult as we hear from some LGBTQ contacts that reporting abuse in a same-sex or trans relationship will bring quote unquote shame to their community because it will create more stereotypes, misinformation, and also because some of them feel this is an issue that should be dealt with only behind closed doors. As Audre Lorde famously coined, silence will not protect you. I like that saying. Silence will not protect you. And it matches perfectly with that old saying that it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. Regardless of what your sexual orientation is, it is always worth talking about. It is always worth talking about it, and it's always worth leaving. To combat these myths, I'm sorry guys, I'm like really dry. That medication that they have me on for my diabetes just keeps my mouth dry, so my lips keep sticking together. That's weird. um, to combat these myths, there are a few ideas that help men affected by abuse and domestic violence. Believe victims and survivors. I would so I would so like to get rid of the phrase believe all women and let's flip it over to believe all victims, because women are not the only victims in the world. One of the most important and compassionate things that we can do to support male victims of abuse and domestic violence is to simply believe. It's worth repeating. Do not judge, do not criticize, and listen without questioning the victim's experience. It's already hard enough to reach out for help when you are a man. So if you find that a male victim wants to share their experience with you, don't be so quick to judge or assume that they are not telling the truth. And that's something that really should stand out to us. If a man, especially knowing what we know about stereotypes and conditioning and basically brainwashing kids to feel and act certain ways based on what their genitalia is, if a man is coming to you and sharing his pain and his experience, that should set off bells in your mind that you need to be there, be supportive, and be helpful. Because the fact that they're coming to you with something that is so hard to admit to or to discuss as a man in today's society should tell you that they trust you. They have some type of faith in you that you'll at least listen to them, that you'll at least be a sounding board, even if you can't necessarily just say help them out of the situation. The fact that they're coming to you is an amazing and important thing. That's just like if a child comes to you to tell you that somebody touched them, you need to shut up, listen, and believe, because that child feels safe and comfortable enough with you to come to you and tell you what's going on with them. It's the same with male victims of abuse. Document the abuse. This is a great way to not only keep track of the situation, but also to materialize the abuse, as we mentioned before. Many people believe that if they don't talk about it, it's like it's really not happening. If you are experiencing abuse, it may help to document the situation. There are several ways you can do document. There are several ways you can do document the abuse. That is so oddly written. There are several things you can do to document abuse. That's how I'm going to say it. Take pictures of yourself if you have physical cuts and bruises. Keep a calendar that shows the instances of abuse suffered, or start journaling as a way to document the abuse in an organized fashion. Documenting the abuse can help in two ways. It can be cathartic. It can be a cathartic way to deal with negative emotions, and it may help the victim to obtain legal aid later on. Remember, if you decide to document your experience, make sure your abuser can't get access to your documents or pictures so he or she can't destroy the evidence, so that you can remain safe while you figure out the next steps in your relationship. Find a support system. Perhaps there's a good friend or coworker you can confide in when talking about what you are experiencing. Having a strong support system can be the key to get through difficult times. You don't have to share everything that is happening to you, but just the fact that there is someone there to listen to what you are going through can be beneficial for your emotional well-being. And that is so true, because I know a lot of times when I go through things, not necessarily just abuse, but just life. And sometimes you go through things and you don't really want someone to, like, you go to someone, but you're not really going to them for like an answer or a solution or help. You just need a sounding board. You just need to be able to have someone that's going to stand there and listen to you and let you talk and get it off your chest. Um, and then you might just need somebody to listen, as you work through it. In your own mind, you talking to them is basically you working through to your solution. Not necessarily asking them to help you come up with a solution or to provide a solution for you. Sometimes you just need that sounding board. You just need a willing ear. Take a proactive approach to your own safety. Keeping your mental, emotional, and physical sanity in check are great ways to remain grounded during and after a situation of abuse. Perhaps you like to play video games, read comics, or lift weights. Engage in activities that make you feel happy and good about yourself. Avoid self-destructive behaviors such as binge drinking, using drugs, or anything that can have negative consequences for your health or the health of those around you. For me, YouTube has kind of been my thing that kind of helped me through because you guys might remember I told you I went through a dad to the point where I was literally suicidal for over a year. And when I started doing YouTube, it was kind of it's really helped me a lot dealing with my own situation. You know, the same way that playing games or reading comic books do for some other people. So for some, it might be exercising, getting out and jogging at least once a day, or going to the gym a couple of times a week, or whatever, playing the piano. It could be anything. Whatever is your thing, whatever helps you to deal with and get through is what you need to focus on. What you need to invest your time and your energy in so that you can get back to being yourself. Reach out to the hotline for help. Know that our advocates are here to support you every step of the way with a sympathetic ear and zero judgment. We are here 24/7, 365, and your interactions are completely free and confidential. Now, I'm going to get out of here soon, but I do want to share this. This website, and let me go ahead and put it in the description now because y'all know me, I will forget stuff. So I'm going to put this link in the description right now. Resources for male victims. Okay. I'm gonna have to put it in later. It won't let me add it. Okay. Resources for male victims. Resources for domestic violence. Men's resources for domestic violence and sexual assault. All right. A lot of this is what we've already read. We've gone over quite a few times just tonight about men don't realize they're being abused. We're not socialized to express their feelings. Here we go. Onslow Women's Center is a great resource for male survivors because all the services we provide to women, we offer to men. If you need additional resources, they are listed below. CDC. The CDC has statistics on male survivors, additional resources, and it explains in depth what male survivors go through when abused. It's informative and helpful information. And there's a website called 1 in 6. This website is partnered with RAIN to bring attention to men who have had unwanted or abusive sexual experiences and provide support and information. Strong Fathers Program. This resource helps men who have a history with abuse and domestic violence being to relate in safe and caring ways to their children, partners, and families. Now, that's something that I actually had not even thought of. Men who have suffered abuse at some point in their life, this is an amazing resource, something to help them in basically overcoming the negative effects of that abuse in order to be able to participate in having and maintaining a healthy family, having and maintaining healthy children. Because I'm just going to be real with you. When you go through that type of experience, it changes you. It changes the way that you see the world, the way that you see other people, the way that you interact with people. God, honest truth, right now, I doubt I'll ever get in a relationship again. I mean, that might change, but due to my previous experiences, I'm at a point where I'm just like, you know what, screw that. you know, excuse me. Which really goes against everything that I believe because I was raised to believe that there's someone for everyone. And because of my experience, that vision is jaded. Imagine being a man going through abuse at whatever point in your life that you went through the abuse, but you're conditioned from childhood not to express emotions, not to, talk about certain things, do certain things. So you're bottled up with all this stuff that happened to you, and you really don't even feel like you can, like you're allowed to bring it out to anyone. That can really destroy the way that you interact with your family, your children, your wife, your coworker, everybody. All right, help guide. This resource explains in depth the nuances of male domestic violence, the things that some people have a hard time understanding about male abuse survivors. It also provides safety planning tips so men can begin to protect themselves from their abusers. And that is really a great resource. We saw on the hotline .org that they have where you can go in and create a safety plan. And I think it's important that there's a male specific safety planning resource out there, because men deal with some things as victims that women will never have to deal with. You know, if a woman cries, it's cool. Somebody's always going to be there with a hanky to dry her tears. If a woman says abuse, 100 people are going to come to try to protect her, shelter her, provide for her. But when it's a man, it's just not the same reaction. And so to have a male focused safety planning resource out there to help them plan to get out of their bad situation is an awesome thing. Men's rights. This resource listed all the rights that men are entitled to under law. There are custody, parenting, financial, and fatherhood resources that men can look through to understand what they are entitled to. That is also another good resource, because when a man is the victim, let's say in a marriage, okay, and they have children, one of the ways that they can be trapped into staying in this abusive relationship are these very things: custody, parenting, financial, and fatherhood. A man may stay in a relationship just so that he can still be with his children. A man may stay in a relationship because stereotypically a woman in a divorce is going to get the child support, the alimony, the house, the car, and the dog. So men may stay in a relationship where they're being physically, mentally, emotionally, financially abused, where their children are being used as pawns to manipulate them and control what they do, how they do it, where they go, whether they go or stay. And so it is important for men to know their rights and to have a place where they can go and get a clearer understanding so that they can indeed make that escape. Statistics: 1 in 7 men, 13.8%, age 18 and older in the United States, have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 4% of men have been injured as a result of intimate partner violence that included rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lives in their lifetime. Yes, the dog too. For male victims, more than half, 52.4%, report being raped by an acquaintance and 15.1% by a stranger. 6% of men have experienced sexual coercion in their lifetime, i.e., unwanted sexual penetration after being pressured in a non physical way. 11.7% of men experience unwanted sexual contact by any perpetrator. 1 in 71 men, 1.4%, have been raped in their lifetime by any perpetrator. Men are primarily stalked by an intimate partner or acquaintance. 41.4% and 40%, respectively. 1 in 19 men, 5.2%, in the United States have experienced stalking, victimization at some point during their lifetime in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed by any perpetrator. 75.9% of men have reported repeatedly receiving unwanted calls and texts. Now, can you imagine? Let's do a hypothetical here. A woman is receiving unwanted calls and texts from a man, threatening, harassing, whatever. She calls the police and says, hey, this person is blowing my phone up. I'm fearful. I think they may harm me or my family. Please help me. This woman will be able to more than likely go to court in front of a judge, lay out her case, show her evidence, and receive at least a restraining order or order of protection. Flip the coin. A man is getting text messages and calls, unwanted, threatening, harassing, whatever. Calls the police and says, this person is blowing up my phone. Same exact situation as with the female. This person is blowing up my phone. I am very fearful that they might harm me, kill me, or someone that I love. That man will probably not make it past the stage of talking to the police because the police are going to be giving him funny looks. They're going to be downplaying it. They're going to be making him feel like less than a man, blah, blah, blah. So he will probably never even make it to court to tell the judge what happened because of the way he was made to feel when he tried to report it. And in many cases, the man will never even make it to the point of calling the police to report it because of the way that they have been conditioned over their lifetime to deal with things. All right, I guess basically I'm just saying we need to really refresh and reset our outlook on domestic violence victims, who they are, what they look like. Because it's not always the tiny petite female who's being abused and battered. Sometimes it's the big buff football player. Sometimes it's that woman that really looks like she could knock somebody from here to Chattanooga. Victims don't fit into boxes. Victims don't fit into pre assigned categories. They could be anyone. That's really all I wanted to share for tonight. I'm going to make sure after I end this, I put this link in this page because I feel like there is a lot of, if you want to follow these links and check out these other pages and resources, I think that's a very good idea. And this page has a lot of other stuff on it that I'm not going into. But since this is a women's center, I think that most of the things here will be beneficial to victims, male or female. So good night, guys. Thanks for joining me again. I won't be on tomorrow. I have a lot to do, but I'll probably be back Thursday. Thanks, Kai. All right. Good night, y'all.